Hi there, BookTube. It's Cassandra, and today we're doing the January wrap-up. This January, I read 8 books. Don't expect me to do that every month. It's usually closer to 4 or 5 most months, so I want to just keep expectations, let's say, low. But, you know, it's January. You hit the ground running, thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to read all this stuff. It's going to be so exciting. And that enthusiasm probably won't last as long. Well, I know for a fact because it's February and I haven't finished a book yet and it's already the middle of the month. But, you know, let's not worry about that right now. So I read some middle grade books. I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 middle grade books. 1 young adult and 3 adult books. I must be missing something. Oh, and 1 nonfiction. That's what it was. And so we will talk about those books as we go along. We'll start with the middle grade. So I read Maribel and the Book of Fate by Traci Barnett. Little synopsis is Maribel of Magicos, I guess, isn't the kind of princess who normally goes on adventures. She spent her whole life knowing she's second best to her twin brother, Prince Marco, the chosen one, foretold in the all-important Book of Fate. While it is not, sorry, let me start again. Which is why it's especially alarming when Marco is kidnapped, a turn of events that the book didn't predict. And even more alarming when it falls to Maribel to mount a rescue mission. So, in this book, you know, her brother is supposed to be the chosen one, and she's kind of second fiddle. They're twins, but, like, he's the chosen one. His parents pay attention to him more than they do to her. She's often told to, like, just, you know, sit back and do princessy things and, like, kind of stay out of the limelight. And, but when her brother is kidnapped, she's the only one that's like, oh, we need to go do something about this. And so she and her lady's maid and the unicorn here go on a quest to save him. This book was okay. I've read better versions of, like, you know, the kind of magical fairy tale, fractured fairy tale type of thing. So it wasn't my favorite version of this, but if you have a kid that's like really into fractured fairy tales, and especially things where, you know, girls can do things just like boys, this would be a good one. So it's kind of one of those, like, probably 3 to 3.5 out of 5. One of these, like, it was okay, not spectacular. And, you know, I'm not rushing out to find more books by this author. So, and it's the kind of book that I would give to one of my students who had already read the other fractured fairy tales that I have in the library, and I just need to and that's the only thing that they want to read. So I would probably happily give them this, but probably not the first book. This wouldn't be the first fractured fairy tale that I give them. It might have been, it would be like the 4th or 5th after they've read all the others. So like I said, 3.5. So that's Maribel and the Book of Fate. So this is Lisa Fipps' Starfish. I read this year for Mock Newbery. We have Mock Newbery at my school every year. We pick 3 books for the kids to read and then vote on their favorite, and this was one of the 3 that they chose. So in this book, the main character, whose name is Ellie, she is an overweight girl. She's going into the 6th grade, and she's dealing with a lot of kids teasing her and bullying her, and she's dealing with her mom, who is kind of bullying her as well. Like, she's always commenting on her weight and posting articles on the fridge about weight loss and trying to pressure her into surgery, like gastric bypass, basically, like, or some version of that. And like, so she's dealing with a lot of stuff. In the book, she starts seeing a therapist that her dad takes her to. and the therapist helps her deal with bullying and deal with like her like accepting herself, that type of thing. So it's a great book. It's written in verse. I always think that I don't like novels in verse, and then I read them and I always really enjoy it. I really enjoyed this one. It definitely made me cry. It's definitely one of those books that is, I read it and I was like, this is very important, and I loved it, and I'm never going to read it again because it's another case of like a parent being terrible in the book, which I'm very sensitive to. But I really enjoyed this one because it was kind of realistic. The ending wasn't a neat, tidy little bow. There were things said, there were things done, but like it wasn't this, neat little happy ending that sometimes middle grade books have. And don't get me wrong, it's important sometimes for middle grades to have these kind of hopeful, happy endings. But I also think it's important for ones to have things that maybe aren't as neat and tidy, because sometimes kids' lives aren't neat and tidy. And I felt like, without giving anything away, I felt like that ending was really helped a lot. So this, I think I gave maybe 4 out of 5 stars, maybe even 5. It's really great. I would definitely recommend it to any of the kids. I would recommend it to adults even. It's a quick read and it's really emotionally impactful. So that is Lisa Phelps' Starfish, which, like I said, I might bump it up to a 5. I think I maybe originally gave it a 4 on Goodreads because, they won't let you do the half stars. I wish they would. Half stars, Goodreads. Half stars. But yeah, I think, this was a really great book. Like I said, I'll never read it again, though, because it made me, real angry at people for being terrible. So that's that one. So this is Jennifer Holmes' The Lion of Mars. I also read this one for our school's mock Newbery. I really enjoyed this one, but I do think the marketing was a little off. This book is about a boy who lives on Mars. He's one of the colonists there from the United States. And there's a bunch of other colonies from other countries, but they don't talk to them anymore. So it's just him on this colony with all the other people from the United States. So there's a couple other kids. He is the youngest. There's one pretty close to his age, maybe a year or two older. And then there's some teenagers as well, and as well as some adults. And it's just about their lives on Mars and how they got there, how they live. But it's the marketing really focuses on something that doesn't happen until the second half of the book, kind of maybe even the last third, in that the adults on the ship start to get sick, and it's up to the kids to figure out why they're sick and how to help them. And the marketing is really focused on the adults getting sick because this came out in 2021. It was written in 2020. The author actually finished it before the pandemic happened, and so she didn't actually base it, at least that's what I read. She didn't actually base it on like Corona-19. It was more just like, what if, you were a kid in this isolated community and the adults got sick and you had to help. And then it kind of became more relevant as things progressed. So I think it was in the editing process when Corona-19 hit. So that's how they marketed it. But realistically, it's more about why are they isolated from the other colonies. That's a big part. Like there's the adults kind of hint at it a lot, but they don't really talk about it. And so they don't know why they're stuck there alone with just this teeny colony of people. So, but it's a great story. It's about, being a kid and like trying to find your place and, trying to get along with all these other, like in this small community. It's It's up to Bell to find his courage, uncover the truth, and face the terrifying unknown to save his family. So it's just about found families as well, and it's a great book. I really enjoyed it. This is the one my kids chose as their Mock Newbery winner, and I can see why. It's like got a lot of adventure. It's very fast paced, and the character development, like the relationship between the characters, are really interesting and fun to read about. So I think I gave this one a 4. Jennifer L. Holm writes great books for middle grade kids. I recommend her stuff to kids all the time. She really understands how to like hook kids and write about their stories in a way that keeps them engaged. So The Lion of Mars by Jennifer L. Holm. For the YA book that I read in January, I read The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. I apologize if I didn't quite put the right emphasis on the right syllable for her name. I meant to look it up before I started this video, but I did not. So this book is about a girl. Her name is Decca. So I'm going to read the first bit. So 16-year-old Decca lives in fear and anticipation of the blood ceremony that will determine whether she becomes a member of her village. Already different from everyone else because of her unnatural intuition, Decca prays for red blood so she can finally feel like she belongs. But on the day of the ceremony, her blood runs gold, the color of impurity, and Decca knows she will face a consequence worse than death. Then a mysterious woman comes to her with a choice: stay in the village and submit to her fate, or leave to fight for the emperor in an army of girls just like her. So in this book, this girl finds out that she is, they call them Alaki, I think is how it's pronounced. I did not listen to this one on audio, so I had to kind of make that up in my head. So they're like these near immortal beings with like special gifts. So they can be killed, but it is very, very difficult. So like there is like a thing that will kill them, but they don't know what it is. So for some girls, they can survive being burnt alive, but if you cut off their heads, they'll die. Or they can survive being drowned, but if you burn them alive, they'll die. But they don't know what their final death will be. They have these like near deaths all the time, where they'll be like have something that should kill them, and then they go into this like special state, and they'll regenerate, and then they'll be fine. And so that's kind of the magical system. And so of course the emperor wants to get all these girls together because they're nearly invincible, and so they're gonna go fight these like demon creatures. And they're paired up with a boy that's enlisted in basically the army, and to be like their brothers in arms. And they all like the book is about them training so that they can defeat these like weird flying demon things. And it gets pretty crazy. There's like a lot of world building in this one, where you like learn some very interesting stuff about like how the girls with the gold blood came to be and their powers and all this kind of fun stuff. I don't want to say too much because it kind of gives away like the important parts. But I enjoyed this one. Decca is a great main character. She deals with the fact that she's been indoctrinated to believe that she's a demon and that she's evil, and she meets all these other girls who are dealing with a lot of the same things, and they like come together and like find their place in this crazy world. The other girls, like she creates this great sisterhood with the other girls. It's a lot of book about like sisterhood and there's a lot of stuff in there that's kind of like metaphor for the oppression of women, that type of thing. It's like not my favorite YA fantasy. I see a lot of potential for the next book. There's another one called The Merciless Ones that's coming out soon, or maybe it is out. It's soon enough that I felt okay about reading this book and not feeling like I was not going to be able to read the next one without going like, wait, what happened in the first book? So I do think it's one of those, like, it's a great debut, and I'm really interested to see what this author does with this world from that point. I also enjoy it because they set it up for a sequel, but it does feel like a complete story, which sometimes like YA duologies and trilogies definitely feel like duologies and trilogies. Like they're oh yeah, we're not gonna answer any questions in book one. Whereas this definitely asked and answered a good chunk of questions so that you felt like it was a complete story. Which I always appreciate in books like this. So I will be reading the second one. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the story progresses. So hopefully in the next couple months you will see another review of the second book of the Gilded Ones. I think it's a duology, but don't quote me on that. It might be a trilogy. So that is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. Alright, so this was Think Again by Adam Grant. I listened to this one on audio, and I really loved it. Intelligence is usually seen as the ability to think and learn, but in a rapidly changing world, there is another set of cognitive skills that might matter more: the ability to rethink and unlearn. In our daily lives, too many of us value the comfort of conviction over the discomfort of doubt. We listen to opinions that make us feel good instead of ideas that make us think hard. We see disagreement as a threat to our egos rather than an opportunity to learn. We surround ourselves with people who agree with our conclusions when we should be gravitating towards those who challenge our thought process. The result is that our beliefs get brittle long before our bones. We think too much like preachers defending our secret beliefs, prosecutors proving the other side wrong, and politicians campaigning for approval, and too little like scientists searching for truth. Intelligence is no cure, and it can even be a curse. Being good at thinking can make us worse at rethinking. The brighter we are, the blinder we are to our own limitations. And this is a book that kind of teaches you how to rethink your beliefs and your thought processes. It's got a lot of great advice for organizations, individuals, and even schools. I'm actually considering suggesting this as a summer read for the teachers at my school. There's a whole section about how to teach kids how to think critically, which is a big part of what the library profession is really pushing, is critical thinking skills and information literacy. So this one's a great book for that. I have a hard time explaining why I like this book, because there's so much in it, and I probably should have taken more notes. But if you are looking for a book that will kind of challenge your thinking and also teach you how to challenge your own thinking on a day-to-day basis, this is a great book for doing that. I might try to reread it later this year and take better notes and do like a whole video just about this book. But it was a great beginning of the year, New Year's, New Year, New You kind of book to read. So that's Think Again by Adam Grant. So I don't have a physical copy of this book, but this is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. So a little bit about this book, if I can get my Kindle to cooperate. Just one. Cursed Kindle. Okay, about this book. So this book is Lydia is dead, but they don't know this yet. So begins this exquisite novel about a Chinese-American family living in 1970s small-town Ohio. Lydia is the favorite child of Marilyn and James Lee, and her parents are determined she will fulfill the dreams they were unable to pursue. But when Lydia's body is found in a local lake, the delicate balancing act that has kept the Lee family together is destroyed, tumbling them into chaos. A profoundly moving story of family secrets and longing. Everything I Never Told You is a gripping page turner, etc., etc. So my problem with literary fiction is the fact that it's miserable people being miserable, and that's what this book was about. It was miserable people being miserable, and I knew pretty early on that I wasn't going to enjoy it, but I wanted to know how the daughter died, which of course is not a spoiler because they told you both in the description, and it's like the first or second line of the book. It's, so that's not a spoiler. So she had me gripped in because I wanted to know, like, how did the daughter die? Was she murdered? Did she commit suicide? Like, what happened? I did not enjoy, it was not a satisfying ending. I should have stopped when I knew that I hated everybody in the book. The parents were awful. Nobody talked to anyone, and I get that it's supposed to be set in the 70s, so these are repressed people who grew up in the 1950s, like the parents, they were young people in the late 50s. I still hated them, and I hated everything about it. Sorry, I feel like this book, I'm happy for you. It's just, that's my problem with lit fiction. It's always been my problem, is it's always so dreary and depressing, and that's not why I read. And I know that some people, they want to read real life stories that reflect things back to them, and I do that occasionally, but I don't know. I'm also really sensitive to stories where like the parents are not good parents, and where it feels like they're not even trying. And that's definitely the vibe I got off these parents. Like they were so concerned about their own lives and their own like disappointments that they like were terrible to their children, and I am really sensitive to stuff like that. My parents are really awesome, but I had lots of friends, or not lots. I had a few friends growing up where their parents were less than awesome, and they were close friends of mine, and like, we kind of half adopted them, so like, but I'm kind of sensitive to books where like you're like, oh my god, just be a not terrible parent. Like, is this so hard? I don't get it. So that was my experience with Everything I Never Told You. Like, structurally, the book is well written. I think the point was that you were supposed to be frustrated with them as people, and the pressures that they put on their children. And if that was the point, which I do think it was, she achieved that very well. But it did make me like want to be done a lot of the time. I basically only read this book when I was shelving because I needed something to pass the time, and it was the kind of thing, if I spaced out for a few minutes, I was like, oh, I don't really care what I missed. I hate all of you. So that was Everything I Never Told You by Celeste. And again, if you love the book, awesome. It's just, I was not in the right headspace to read about these people. So that was that book. So I also read 2 books by Alix E. Harrow. I do not have either of them because I read them on my Kindle / listen to them on Libby / Audible, depending on which book we're talking about. And I might have started on Libby and then decided I needed to own them. So the first one is The Once and Future Witches, which hopefully I'll be able to edit a little box right here so they can talk about the Once and Future Witches. So it's set in the late 1800s. 3 sisters use witchcraft to change the course of history in this powerful novel of magic, family, and the suffragette movement. So a lot of other booktubers have talked about this book. It's actually why I got excited about this book. I actually had a friend tell me about this book a long time ago. She sent me an email and it was like an NPR review, and she's like, oh, I think you might like this. And I was like, cool, I'll add it to my list of like 900 books that I need to read. And I wish I was joking about that number, but I'm not. My Goodreads has literally 900 books to be read. It's a problem. But anyways, back to the Once and Future Witches. So I knew about it, and then I watched a couple of YouTubers talk about it, and I was like, all right, it's gotta happen. So I was reading it at the end of 2021, but I did not finish it until 2022, January. So it's the Eastwood Sisters, James Juniper, Agnes Amaranth, and Beatrice Belladonna. And I'm putting that emphasis on it because the person who read the book definitely did it in kind of a southern Appalachia kind of accent, which is fair because that's kind of where they're supposed to be from. So we have these three sisters, and they live in this alternate timeline where witches were real. So it wasn't just like women being accused of witchcraft because men are the worst. It was actually like they're real witches, and they could do magic. But by the time we get to the 1890s, where the sisters live, like the time period they live in, witching has been mostly gone from the world. There are women and men also. Men can do witchcraft too. There are people who can do little spells to like mend clothes or make their hair look a little nicer, but like real magic, as they like real proper magic, is gone from the world. And these three sisters, I'm gonna have to record this later. Hi there, I am back. So I was talking about the Once and Future Witches when somebody called me to tell me my lunch delivery was here. I was going to re-record the whole thing, but to be honest, I like the first take. So we're just going to jump right back in, and we're going to kind of recap that we have three sisters. It's the 1890s, and they, and I'll tell you a little more about what's going on with them. So they have been estranged from each other for the last, I think, 7 years in the book. So we have these three sisters, and they all end up in New Salem, Massachusetts. So New Salem is rebuilt a few miles down the road from Old Salem, which is the last time that like witchcraft had reared its ugly head. And like the witches had taken over the town of Old Salem back in, back when, the witch trials were happening. So anyways, they're at New Salem, and the book starts with James Juniper, who goes by Juniper most of the time. She ends up in New Salem, and she's on the run from the law. And she reunites with her sisters, and they all come together, and they accidentally enact this spell that brings forth the Way of Avalon. That's what it is, the Way of Avalon. And so it's all about them working together with all the other women in the town to try to bring back witchcraft. It addresses a lot of the issues with the suffragette movement, like the racist and classist nature of like the real life suffragette movement, and deals with like women's power and women's rage and frustration. And I loved it so much, and it was so good, and I would recommend it to everybody that I come across that has any interest in like fantasy or historical fantasy. The characters were so well done, and like the sisters were all unique and had like these really strong character motivations, and the alternate history was super fun, and I loved it. It was so much fun. The narrator for the audiobook was amazing, and she definitely was part of the reason that I got into the book. And there were these great times where we were so frustrated because every time they would make a positive step, they would be like, there was something terrible would happen, and like you were like in danger at all times. Oh, it was just I had so many feelings, and like I was so anxious for these women. I wanted them to win, but I also knew, you know, it's 1890s, so how are they gonna win? And I just, oh, I loved it. So 5 out of 5. I definitely recommend The Once and Future Witches by Alix E. Harrow. I also read Alix E. Harrow's newest, I think it's a novella length, like it's definitely shorter, a much shorter book, and it's called The Spindle Splintered, which is the first book in what will be a series. In that series, our main character has a made-up disease that she got from being born in this certain area. Like it was a kind of environmentalism kind of thing where she ends up with this disease because of some sort of contaminated something. It was a little, I don't remember, so it was definitely just not memorable, like why she has this disease, because it's not really important why. Like the point is she has a disease that is most likely going to kill her before she hits like 22, 23. So she's a young woman dealing with this, like this weight of like knowing for most of her life that she is not going to survive very far into adulthood. And then she's really obsessed with the Sleeping Beauty myth. Like she studies it. She's read all the different versions. She like wrote a dissertation about it. And then she gets sucked into Sleeping Beauty. Like she is in this like weird tower in her hometown, and she finds like a spindle and pricks her finger, and then ends up sucked into the Sleeping Beauty myth with a kind of classic Sleeping Beauty like girl, and they're trying to save her from the curse. It's another fractured fairy tale, but for adults. There is a lot of cuss words in both the Alix E. Harrow books. So if you are like a librarian who is considering these for like your teen readers, don't get me wrong, I think they would love them, but make sure that they or their parents don't have issues with like lots of cuss words. And it was funny and irreverent. And I wanted it to be longer because I really enjoy her writing. I did not love it quite as much as The Once and Future Witches, but I do think it's just because being like a shorter book, she doesn't have as much time to work with as she did in Once and Future Witches. It gave me a lot of 500 Kingdom vibes. So the 500 Kingdoms was a series by Mercedes Lackey that came out at least 10 years ago. It might be longer. But I loved this book. Is another like fractured fairy tales where it's like, oh, like let's spin these fairy tales. That's like, give it a more feminist retelling. It definitely reminded me of that. So I will be reading the future books. And like I said, my only complaint is I kind of wanted more time to develop the characters. But I know that she's doing a thing where like there's like shorter books, probably more like the Wayward Children series. Like I think they're that length. I don't know because I don't actually own the book. But I know when I looked at it on Kindle, the length was, a couple hundred pages, maybe less. I will post here-ish maybe or down here how many pages the book was. Like according to Kindle, or Amazon.com. And so that was my only complaint, is I wanted more. And she's releasing another book later this year, so I guess I'll get more when it comes out. I think she's dealing with, I want to say Sleeping Beauty, or not Sleeping Beauty. She already did Sleeping Beauty. Snow White. I think she's doing Snow White in that book. But don't quote me on that. But yeah, I will definitely be reading more Alix E. Harrow. It's great. I love the author. I love the books that are forthcoming from Alix E. Harrow. So I haven't read 10,000 Joys of January. I've heard mixed results on that, but but it's on my list of things to see if I'm like, oh, do I love everything by this author or just things about fairy tales and witches? So, yeah, so those were the adult books that I read. And yeah, that's what I know. So those were the books I read in January. I hope you enjoyed it. I learned that I need to take some better notes on the books that I've been reading. I'm not really much of a note taker or annotator. They tried to teach me how to do that in school, and I was very bad at it. And I never really did a lot of. It just seems wrong to underline in books, even when I own them. I need to get some like nice Post-its or something. I barely even write reviews on Goodreads. I will pop a link down in the chat for my Goodreads if you want to check out what I've been reading. But don't expect a lot of reviews, and definitely don't expect long reviews. If I do review, it's usually a few sentences about what I liked and what I didn't like, because I feel like you can read what the book is about in the actual Goodreads description, so don't need to like recap in my own reviews. If you want recaps and like more rambling reviews like the end of this video, you can just watch the videos. I hope you enjoyed it. Come back next week. I might be talking about how I became a librarian, because I did not think that I was going to be a librarian when I started my undergraduate degree, but here I am. And so I might talk a little bit about that, but I do reserve the right to change my mind about what next week's video is, so you'll just have to come back and find out. So if you are inclined, please like or subscribe. Send me a comment down below. It's been so nice to see how supportive everyone is with the comments and the liking and the subscribing. It's really melts my little heart. So I appreciate everyone who has done that, and if you're new, welcome. Please, I don't have very many videos to watch, so go back, learn more about me in the first 2 videos. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye-bye. Hello again, YouTube. It's Cassandra with this month's